Well, good morning. Welcome to another day of another week with the PartyOn Bible Study. In fact, this is our last week in the PartyOn Bible Study. And today we continue on in the book of Luke as we're looking into Jesus and his table practices. This one, eating with dirty hands, which not a good thing around our household for little kids. Eating with dirty hands, always got to wash those hands before dinner. Also was very important to my mom as well that I wash my hands because Lord only knows where those hands have been, right? So clean them before you come to the table. And that's what's going to be the central focus of our passage of today. But before we get there, wow, first of all, yesterday in Cleveland, wow, what an amazing, incredible experience. So thankful for those of you who are part of Christ's Table, not just those in Northeastern Ohio, but those of you all across the U.S. and even around the world are a part of Christ's Table today, and we're thankful for that. And so because of your participation in our ministry, I love giving away free things. And so I'm giving away a copy of this book to everybody who's been a donor to Christ's Table in June. It's a great book. We're actually going to use this book as the foundation of studies in July, as well as at the very beginning of August. We're going to have some book studies, some book groups that go along with it. I'm going to do some interviews that are also a part of it, and would love to have you join us for that journey. Now, I kind of want the book to be a surprise, so I'm intentionally holding up the backside of this book, not because I don't want you to know it, but just because sometimes there's something fun about opening the box when it comes and seeing what's in there. And I'm actually going to throw in a few other gifts as well in this box when it comes here now in just a couple of weeks. So if you'd like to be a part of getting that, like I said, I'm sending it for free to all of our donors at ChristTable.today. Go to that website right there and you can donate there. If you just want to know what's going on in our ministry, not sure that you want to be involved financially with us yet, that's okay as well. You can sign up for our email list there and find out everything that is going on with what God is doing with us. But without any further delay, I want to make sure that we are able to get enough time in our text today in Luke chapter 11. Now, I'm not going to read the entire text today. I know that I did that at least once last week, maybe twice as well, because I want you to be able to spend some time in the Bible as well, discerning and reading and learning. So I'm going to set you up for today's reading and then send you off on your own to do it yourself if you've not already done so. So we'll begin in Luke chapter 11, verse 37. As Jesus was speaking, this is one of his kind of public events where he's speaking and teaching and healing as well. One of the Pharisees, who are oil and water with Jesus, especially now, there is a lot of tension. They don't like Jesus. And after this event, after this text, it's going to be solidified, the resistance that they have for him. So one of the Pharisees invites him home for a meal, which is magnanimous, maybe, but it seems as though it may also be intended in order to trap Jesus or to find out more about him. So Jesus accepts this dinner invitation, goes in, and he takes his place at the table, which means there are many other people there around the table as well. This is not a one-on-one affair. His host was amazed, and amazed may not be the right word here, perplexed and all aghast, to see that Jesus sat down without first performing the hand washing ceremony required by Jewish custom. And so the Pharisees had put in place many rituals, many ceremonies that were intended to keep the body both practically and physically clean as well as spiritually clean. And to not participate in these rituals meant that you were not just physically unclean, but you also were spiritually unclean, that God did not approve of you. And so your holiness was ranked in accordance as to how many and how often and how well you lived out these rhythms, these rituals. And so for somebody as upstanding as Jesus, a rabbi, essentially akin to being a pastor, or a pastor is a teacher, a professor, all of those things wrapped up into one, as well as being a celebrity, kind of a rock star, superstar. Jesus was, as a rabbi by this time. This Pharisee is absolutely aghast, amazed, in awe, shocked that Jesus is not fulfilling some of the base level requirements of those who practice Judaism. It was required by Jewish custom, it says, not by law of God. So Jesus says to him, "You Pharisees are so careful to clean the outside of the cup and the dish, but inside you're filthy, full of greed and wickedness." Now, clearly, there's a lot going on here, because Jesus essentially unloads on them and their customs. It may well be, even I wonder if Jesus intentionally did not wash his hands, because he knew that they were watching to see whether or not he was going to follow their customs and religious rituals or not, whether or not he was going to honor God and be holy, or dishonor God by not washing his hands and be unholy, unclean. Fools, Jesus says, didn't God make the inside as well as the outside? So clean the inside by giving gifts to the poor, and you will be clean all over. Jesus is saying, you're so concerned with making sure that you're clean on the outside. Okay, what about your insides? Don't you understand that the inside is just as important to God? He made the inside just as well as the outside, and you are filthy on the inside. You may be clean on the outside because you washed your hands before dinner, but the things that your mind touches and that your eyes touch and that your heart gives itself to are filthy. You're full of greed. You're wicked. You're not holy by any stretch of the imagination, and you're not clean either, even though you may not have dirt underneath your fingers. So why are you not as concerned about being clean on the inside? Giving gifts to the poor, helping the under-resourced. Why don't you do some of those things, and then you'll be clean inside and out? What sorrow awaits you, Pharisees? Jesus knows they're not going to do it. For you are careful to tithe even the tiniest income from your herb gardens. Jesus doesn't say it's wrong of them to do that. He just simply says, you do that, but you ignore justice, and you ignore the love of God. You are so caught up in the minute details of your rituals, in how you pray, in how you wash, in how you tithe, in what you tithe, in what you wash. But you're ignoring things that matter too. Justice. You're ignoring other people. You're ignoring the love of God. Oh, I could preach an entire sermon about how culture right now ignores justice in order to perform religious ritual. Kneeling at a worship event. A football game is a worship event. Kneeling at a worship event. Ignoring justice because of a broken ritual. That's not the way you perform that ritual. That is a sacred moment. The national anthem. You can't kneel during that. That's disrespectful. All the while ignoring the injustice that the broken ritual is pointing to. This is precisely what Jesus is saying that the Pharisees are doing here. They have this ritual that they believe is sacred and makes them holy, washing hands. All the while they are ignoring the greater issues. You should tithe, Jesus says. absolutely give a percentage of everything that you have to God, but don't neglect the more important things. Jesus says there are more important things than your tithe. What sorrow awaits you, Pharisees? All from not washing hands. What sorrow awaits, because it went so much deeper than that. It went to their hearts, it went to their souls, it went to their mindsets. What was happening on the inside was overflowing into the ways that they controlled and tried to control what happened on the outside with people. Now I'm going to hit pause there, and I'm going to encourage you to take some time to finish reading the rest of the text for today, what we ended in 43. So we've got about 10 more verses there to get to 53. And wow, if you think Jesus is really hitting it straight and not pulling any punches now, just keep reading. It gets intense. What is Jesus saying here, though, both in the parts that we've read and the parts that you'll read in just a few minutes? First of all, he's saying to them, don't twist God's truth into a complex legal puzzle that only makes those who crack the puzzle holy. This is something that the Pharisees were notorious for doing, and which frustrated the heck out of Jesus, was that they would put so many customs and rules and regulations in place that had to be followed in order for one to be holy. It became so complex that only the memorization and the attention to detail and giving yourself wholly to all of these minute little things would essentially make you okay with God. And so it was a ton of work to try to crack the puzzle, and the reason for the puzzle was to try to keep as many people out as possible. Why? Because the fewer people that are in grace with God, the more visibility those people have to God and with God is their perception. So if they take a lot of other boats out of the water, then more of the catch comes to them, right? And Jesus is saying, you know what? Faith, spirituality is not intended to be a complex puzzle. Wow, how many churches do this? How many churches make coming to God this complex puzzle of having to go and do the right thing at the right time and say the right thing and repeat these words, and unless you do all of these things, you cannot be in fellowship with us, and you can't be in good graces with God. And God essentially says here, Jesus essentially says here, and other places over and again, that faith should not be so difficult as figuring out a high liturgy worship service in order to come to God. It should not be that difficult. It's not as though those things are wrong, but if those things are being used to stand in the way of people coming to God, or in effect are standing in the way of people coming to God, then that's not holiness. God says coming to God should be as simple as coming and sitting down at the table. It should be simple, and it should be welcoming, and it should not be complex. For Jesus, this whole thing isn't about the hygiene, but it's about the heart. It's not about people washing their hands or not washing their hands. He didn't care if they went ahead and washed their hands before eating. It wasn't about hygiene. It was about the heart. It was the fact that they were using their hygiene practices in order to say that people were broken, in order to say that people were far from God and were not holy because they had dirt underneath their fingernails. Ridiculous. But in what ways do we do that? In what ways do I do that and you do that, where we put in these complex puzzles that people have to adhere to in order to know God, have a relationship with God, or truly be loved by God? We do it all the time. Here's a challenge. Invite people over for dinner, and you might find things out about yourself that are hard to hear. This Pharisee invites Jesus over for dinner. And what happens is he is confronted with things that were very hard to hear. This is one of the curses, but ultimately one of the blessings of opening up our tables and opening up our homes to other people, to parties, is that whenever we invite people over for dinner, invariably we are going to find out things about ourselves that are difficult to process, that are going to be difficult to accept. Sometimes those people are going to say things that are going to challenge our notions of what is right and what is wrong. Sometimes those people are going to say things that are going to offend us. Sometimes the things that we see in the way that people live their lives differently than us are going to make it very difficult for us to continue to accept them. And yet God says you can't give up the table. You can't push the table away. In fact, I'm going to make the table a part of my worship through the Lord's Supper, through communion, through Eucharist. And you're going to model that in your own homes as well. And if I'm not rejecting anybody from the table and I'm allowing everybody to come to the table, then you darn well better do the same. And doing so is going to break things down in your life and in your heart, and ultimately it's going to make you a better person for it. It's hard. It's hard to hear truth and to see truth in other people, but we're always better for it. Don't push them away or keep them away. Let them in. Don't judge what you can't see. The Pharisees had become PhDs in judging people's internal mind and heart and even soul and eternal destiny on the basis of the dirt underneath their fingernails. They had set up metrics based on the things that they could see in order to determine who was holy, who was right with God, and whom God loved, and whom God didn't. And if you don't think that we do this, you're a liar. We do this. We do this on the basis of the color of skin. We do. Even though we try not to, I don't know that you can be progressive enough to not in moments make stereotypes and judgment calls about people based on their ethnicity, based on their background, based on their differences. Do this all the time, especially in religious circles, over sexual identity, over questions of LGBTQI plus, over questions of transgender, over questions of birth identity and these things. And we end up taking one small piece of information, things that we can see, and judging what we can't by it. It's evil. It's godless. And it's to be an accidental Pharisee, or maybe even sometimes to be an intentional Pharisee. To me, this is what being progressive is. To me, being progressive is saying, I'm going to move beyond all of these things, the labels, the stereotypes, the putting other people in boxes and setting up boundaries around them and around God in order to ultimately control and not be afraid. Jesus says, you know what? If you're going to follow me, if you're going to be on the way with me, you don't have permission to do that. Only I have permission to judge, because only I can see what's going on the inside. And Jesus could see what was going on the inside of these Pharisees. And he cried foul. He said, you're doing everything right on the outside to be clean, but on the inside, you are a freaking dirty mess. Don't let that be you. Stop judging people for the things that you can see Let people be people. And ask them to do the same to you. Let you be you. We're all on a journey trying to get better. Let's do it together. Let's do it around the table. Let's do it in the way God intended it to be done. Don't invite people over for dinner like the Pharisee in order to judge them. Invite people over for dinner because you recognize that what you see on the outside is not what's going on the inside. And there's no better way to get to know someone than at the table. Till tomorrow, party on.